Hey folks, welcome back for another episode of Code Club here on the refinement Professional Development YouTube channel. I'm happy to be with you this morning to do a live stream where we are going to make a figure that was reported by the Washington Post in conjunction with the Kaiser Family Foundation. We will also take another try at using Positron to kind of share some of the new things I've learned about it. And as if that wasn't enough newness, we will also play around a little bit more with the newest release of ggplot2, which is version 4. And so there's some interesting things in there that I haven't totally wrapped my head around with and haven't gotten a lot of experience with yet. But hey, we're going to practice with it and see how things go. I would love it if you were to go ahead and leave a comment in the comment box on the side. I think it's over here or over here. I don't know where it is. But let me know where you're coming from. And I would love to know if you've tried Positron or any of the features in the new version of ggplot2 yet. Okay. So let's see. I see Rents is here from the Netherlands. Thanks as always for joining us. So let me head over and get us going with what I want to talk about. So as always, if you aren't subscribed to my newsletter, you really should be. Because what you will find is that a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the plot that we're going to make today. Why don't I go ahead and open that for you all so you can see what that looks like. And I thought I had everything ready, but not quite. So this is the plot that we are going to make in today's episode, coming from the Kaiser Family Foundation, as well as the Washington Post, talking about vaccination. For whatever reason, this is a perennial question in the United States. And as I say that, I'm kind of worried that we are infecting, if you will, the rest of the world with our vaccine hesitancy. I don't understand it, but hey, there you go. So regardless of the issue of vaccination, I thought this was an interesting plot. And this is what we're going to make in today's episode. So again, if you had subscribed to the newsletter, which you can do by going to refinement.org, you can see how to join the newsletter there. I will go ahead and plop that in here into the chat, get that going. And that would then have shown you an email version of this article that I wrote. And this came out about 2 weeks ago. I'll go ahead and paste that in here to the chat as well for anyone that wants to check that out. This email newsletter presents these figures at kind of a 30,000 foot view, trying to get people to think about what the visual is saying, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and then how they would try to implement it in R. I share how I would do it in R, again, at that very high view, without getting into specifics of syntax. You can see some function names in here or different packages I might think about using. But I really save building the plot and writing out the syntax for these live streams, okay? If you want the Washington Post article, here is a free version of questionable legality. It's on the internet, so it must be legal, right? I don't know about that, but hey. And then here is the article from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which I'll go ahead and paste in there. And because the Kaiser Family Foundation version, kff.org, is free, I'm going to be taking the plot, or the plot that I showed you already, comes from this article. And so they've got an overview here, as well as 2 articles from the Washington Post. I think this first one was the one that I linked. And yeah, so then if you come through the different sections up here, there's 3 sections, and I tagged to the right. You can see the key findings, and that there's a variety of different figures in here. This is the figure that I've shown you already, figure 2. And they have kind of 2 different types of plots in this article, right? So they have, sorry if I'm making you ill by scrolling through this one that I've already shown you. This is a set of columns with each column having a different horizontal bar plot. They also have these, which are horizontal stacked bar plots that have some level of interactivity into them. I don't know that the interactivity is very useful, but whatever. Make your own plot, right, Pat? All right, so again, we're going to be making this plot, and let me share with you kind of a zoomed in version that I found. and to kind of go through some of the things that I thought were interesting. Okay. Great to have you, Fabian, joining from Germany. It's German Unity Day. Great. Thanks for following along. And Rents hasn't been using Positron much, but it's still a bit different from RStudio. Yeah, so we'll get into one of those differences here as I go along. But I don't know. I'm trying to be positive and not be such a hater, but whatever. So again, thinking about this plot, it is a set of columns, right? With each column being a different disease or sets of disease, or I guess I should say vaccine, right? Different vaccine, 4 different vaccines: MMR, polio, the flu, and COVID. I think like MMR and polio we give to children when they're pretty young. The flu, we get annually. At least I got mine, I think, like a week ago for this upcoming season. And then COVID-19 has certainly been relatively new over the last couple of years since the pandemic. Haven't gotten my COVID vaccine yet. Hope to do that soon. So there are these 4 bars, four columns of bar plots. There's also, you might think of vertically, there's kind of 3 different sections, right? So there's a group for like all parents, a group by party identification: Democrat, Independents, Republicans. And then among Republicans, if you're a MAGA Republican or a non-MAGA Republican. So MAGA is Trump aligned, Make America Great Again, no comment. And then non-MAGA would be people who are kind of never Trumpers, right? People who are conservative, but are not aligned with Trump and his populism, okay? So there's kind of like 2 axes, if you will, right? Like there's the vertical and there's the horizontal of the columns. And so as we think about doing this, whenever I kind of think about creating multiple plots in kind of a matrix type format, I think about either facet wrap or facet grid. Facet wrap would allow me to make the 4 columns, right, with a common y-axis. And so that would work here, right, where we have the row names or the y-axis labels, and then we could have 4 columns of bar plots that all have the same y-axis, right? Alternatively, if we did like facet grid, we could say put the vaccine across the rows and the groups across, the vaccines across the columns and the vaccines across the rows, right? The problem with that, I think, though, is that we do have labels in between the different groupings of rows, right? So there's like party ID, and then there's among Republicans, right? And so I think the facet grid might end up being harder than I really want to deal with. And so I think would be to do facet wrap. And so again, we could have the group be the y-axis, and then the faceting be done by the vaccine. And then the x-axis could be the percentage of people in those different groups that would be, say it's important or somewhat important for children in their community to be vaccinated for each of these diseases, right? But then that creates, again, this problem of the group label. And so what I think we could do it for like party ID and among Republicans, that we could give like an A, basically, for the 4 vaccines for each of those 2 groups, right? And we could also then use something like element markdown from the ggtext package to get the total parents party ID and among Republicans to be bolded, and for the other 5 groups to be a regular font. So that's what I think I'm going to do. That's going to be the big part of the plot. The other thing is that we've got the bars are colored or filled by the vaccine. The percentage is also embedded in the bars, and for the most part, it's left justified within the bar, with, I guess, 5 exceptions. So basically, if the percentage is 38% and lower, it's to the right of the bar. It's also black when it's to the right of the bar. And if it's within the MMR bars, it's white. Within the flu, it's also white. If it's within polio or COVID, it's black, right? So they're doing some cool things with the coloring of the text. So that's something we'd have to figure out as well. So I think like the final big thing is that this is a figure, a plot with the article that has a tag. So we don't typically use tags in these videos, but it allows us to have 3 bits of text at the top of each plot. So figure 2 could be the tag. This majorities of parents could be the title. And then this percent who say would be the subtitle. And down at the bottom, we have a caption. The final thing that we haven't done in a while is to put a logo in the bottom right corner. This might get a little bit tricky because we could do that using a package called ggimage, and there's a function called geom_image that would allow us to place an image in the plot. Of course, we're faceting, and so whenever you're doing faceting, it kind of makes working with any type of geom a little bit tricky. So we'll get there eventually. And again, along the way, I want to explore more Positron and ggplot2. There's a lot going on. Let's go ahead and get started with that. I am going to go and open up Positron. And we've seen this in recent weeks. So Rent says, how to read this plot, percentages don't add to 100%. Right, so each of the vaccines would be independent, right? So basically they're saying the percent of parents who say it's very or somewhat important for children in their community to be vaccinated for each of the following, right? So like they're treating each of the 4 vaccines independently, right? And each of the rows is then also independent, right? Because theoretically, if you weighted the 96 for Democrats, the 89 for independents and Republicans, 88%, if you weighted that by the number of people in each of those groups, you would get 90%, right? So the rows aren't independent and the columns aren't independent. So they don't really need to add up to 100. I think those horizontal bar plots we saw on the Kaiser article, they certainly didn't add up to 100%. And I think that's because they're people that perhaps don't know what they would do. Okay, great. It's always good to get a good handle on the data. So when you open Positron like this, or let me back up. So one of the problems with Positron, I guess I shouldn't say it's a problem. So previously when we used RStudio, within our project directory, there could be a file called like vaccines.rproj. If I double click on vaccines.rproj, that would open RStudio so that the working directory was this vaccines directory, right? So I open Positron, and you can see here from this ~/ that my current working directory is my home directory. So if I do get wd down here in the console, that's my current working directory. And so that's not where I want to be. I want to be in vaccines, which is, as you can see, off of my desktop, right? And so how do we do that, right? And so there's a couple ways we could do that. So first, if I go ahead and bring this down a little bit, right? There's a couple ways to open a directory, right? And so one would be to do open folder. And this then, let me get rid of my face. Oh, I'm changing the wrong thing here. Let me try that again. Let's do open folder. And there we go. Okay. We could then go to desktop, vaccines, and then we're in the vaccines directory. I could then do open. And now this is going to reopen Positron. And it then puts me within my working directory that you see over here. If I do control backtick, nope. Let's see. Let me click on the welcome here in the editor. And if I do control backtick, nope. I am not seeing my code window. So let me remember how to do that. This is embarrassing. Let's see. How do I get that? Maybe it's command backtick. Nope. Let's see. This is embarrassing. Normally this isn't such a problem for me to figure out how to open up the console. Let's say open console. Console. There it goes. Okay. So if we go view, console. Okay. So let's try again. View, console. Okay. Let me... All right, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm going to quit Positron, which always seems to be a good strategy, is to quit something and try again. So let's go ahead, open Positron. And then if I do view, okay, console. And again, it opened me back up into my vaccines directory, right? So yeah, so if I do view console, that gets me this. All right, so now I've got my console at the bottom, which is good. And you can see that my working directory is desktop vaccines, okay? Cool. All right, sorry that it took a little bit of time. And then if I open up my vaccines.r, I've got this window here with vaccines. You'll see that vaccines.r up here in the tab is italicized. To me, that means it's just kind of like, it's not permanently within this window, right? So if I then click on vaccines.orig.png, you'll now see that the vaccines.r script is no longer here in the tab, right? And that vaccinesoriginal.png is also italicized. And so then if I go back to vaccines.r, I get that back and it's italicized. If I want it to stay up here as a tab, I can double click on vaccines.r, and now you see vaccines.r is a non-italic font. And if I want to bring up vaccinesorig.png and click on that, now you can see I have both files. And if I double click on that, that gets me the regular font, right? Cool. So this is all to say one way to open up your project in Positron to be in the working directory, okay? So another strategy that I will share with you is from this article from the Positron website, and we'll paste that in. Yes, so Fabian says, couldn't you just use setwd? You could. Setwd is a horrible function, however. It is not reproducible, right? It's not, it doesn't tend to lend itself to reproducibility to sharing code. And so it is a widely held, I don't want to say belief, but widely held best practice that setwd should not be used, okay? And so it's really best to be working from your current working directory. So thank you for asking that question. So this article that I just linked in the comment talks about the rproj file, migrating from RStudio and what to do about it. If you come down to launching Positron in a workspace, this article over here, then you'll see that there's a variety of discussions here, right? And so there was the open folder thing that we actually just did, right? Where we opened it and we went into open a folder, right? Alternatively, you could put Positron on the path and launch it from the shell. And so there's instructions on doing that here. And so what this would allow me to do is to say, open up a terminal window like this, and then do like cd desktop vaccines, and then do positron space period. But it doesn't know positron because positron's not in the path, right? So I need to add positron to the path. To add it to the path, it's got instructions here to launch positron from a terminal. And let me go ahead and copy this over here, paste. So the here package won't work in this situation because it is going to, you'll still need to like migrate to the working directory. So I think ultimately the here package, I think its days are numbered, and I don't think it's going to be as easy or straightforward as kind of the things I've shown you. So what this tells you is that you can, on a Mac and a Windows, I only have Mac, is that you can come up to settings. So if I do positron settings, settings, or actually, no, let's do that here. Let's do it here. So we'll go up to, okay, we'll click in the search window. And what it wants me to do is to do the greater than sign positron, right? So if I come in here, do greater sign positron, and then do path, you'll see that it gives us a couple options, right? So shell command install positron command in path. That's what we want to do. So that tells us it's, the shell command positron was successfully installed in the path. Great. And we can then come back to our terminal. And right now, this isn't going to work. Actually, it did work. Yeah, okay. I thought I had to restart things, but let me go ahead and close Positron and then go ahead and run Positron space period. This then opens up Positron, as you see, in the background in the correct working directory, right? So I would say the variety of ways to open Positron would be to click on the Positron icon, say in your doc or in your applications folder, and then use the navigation window to open that directory. The other would be to use bash, the terminal, navigate to your working directory, and then do positron space period. Again, that's if you're on Mac or Mac or Linux. In that article I shared with you, there are also descriptions of how to do this for Windows that I believe allows you to like right-click on the directory and then open that directory in Positron, which is probably the easiest of all the methods, right? Let me show you a final way. So I'm going to close all these windows and then reopen or quit Positron, reopen Positron. This is putting me, let me see, how can I, all right, well, this isn't allowing me to close. Let me see, let's do a new window. So sometimes Positron opens with the previous project open, and sometimes it doesn't, right? And so this is a new window, and you can see down at the console that we've got the ~/, that's our working directory, right? So I'm not in my vaccines directory. Before, again, I showed you could do like open folder and then click the directory you want. Another way would be to come over to the Explorer, and it says no folder open. And it says you have not yet opened a folder. So I could do open folder. And now I could go in desktop, vaccines, and then do open. And this is going to reopen Positron for me in the correct working directory. Okay, cool. And so I'll go ahead and close this welcome window. And if I click on vaccines, again, I've got that italicized. I'm going to be working in here a lot, so I'm going to double click on this. One of the challenges that I ran into the last time I used Positron on the live stream is that part of it's because I've kind of zoomed in to make it so it's easier for you all to see. But really, I don't feel like this is an economical use of space, right? That I've got the console down here on the bottom. I've got a terminal over on the right, along with the help. If I make a plot, that's going to come over here as well. So if I did like plot 1:10, we see that puts that over here along with the variables. That's part of the session tab, right? And so there's a lot of stuff going on. And so what I'd like is for the console to be over here. Again, my dream would be to not have this plots tab or really the variables tab. I don't use those a whole lot. And when I filed an issue on the Positron GitHub repository, they told me to file an issue for a feature request, but nobody's ever asked for this before. So anyway, so what I could do to get the console over into the right side is I can right click on console, and then there's an argument for move to. And so I can move that to the secondary sidebar. And what that should do is move the console over to the right to be with session. And let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. And so now you see that I no longer have console at the bottom. I have it over here on the right. I do have the debug console, which I'm sure I could move that to the secondary sidebar as well as the problems, move that to the secondary sidebar. Alternatively, I could click this X and that's going to go away. I don't know that I need the problems and all that stuff, right? And so terminal, session, console, right? And so I've got that here. And so now whatever I code here will be shown on the right side of the screen, okay? Along with the plots and everything else. So one other thing that's kind of in the way is the Explorer, right? Like it's not doing a whole lot for me. I can minimize that by clicking on the icon here, and that gives me more real estate. This vertical gray line is the marker of, I want to say like 80 characters wide, and that's typically how wide I want my R code to be, okay? So again, if I then come up to library and do Command Enter, that then runs command library tidyverse over here in the console. And you can see also that I'm using ggplot2 4.0.0. If you don't have ggplot2 4.0.0, then you'll probably want to do like update packages ggplot2, run that. And it's probably going to tell me that, yeah, it's not going to tell me anything. And if I run library tidyverse again, or if I do session info as a function, you'll then see where you are, ggplot2 4.0.0. Okay. So those are a couple things that I've learned about Positron. I guess loading into the correct working directory, moving the console to the right side, as well then as what? I think that's it. Yeah, and just kind of clearing up some of the real estate. And so then there's this extra window here, which I can get rid of with this X, and that'll go away. I think before I was also having a problem with the help, where it was doing weird things. But if I do like question mark geom point, this then does open the help documentation. I guess I should show you. That then, the last time I used Positron, I ran into a problem getting the help to render. So I think we're in good shape, and great. All right, so let's dig in, right? We want to go ahead and create this vaccine's original plot. And again, for those of you that haven't watched in the past, I prefer to make a separate file for the image I'm creating, because ultimately what is shown in the plot window isn't going to be reproducible from kind of run to run or between my computer and your computer, because this window is going to be different size in all of our computers, right? And so there's ways to automate and export things, but that just gets to be too kludgy compared to putting it out as a file, okay? And of course, I can then go ahead and minimize this, and off we go. All right, so I won't belabor that point too much. One thing I do need to make is a ggsave statement, and I'll call it vaccines.png, and I need a width, which I'll say will be 6 inches, and a height. And I want my height and width to be the same aspect ratio as was in the original. I can go over to the terminal. I'm in the vaccines directory, and I can do file vaccines original.png, and this tells me it's 1220 by 1280 pixels. So that's 1220 wide, 1280 high, right? So we can do some math here and do 1220. So we'll do 6 divided by 1220 times 1280 to get the height. And so that, when we run that, gets us 6.295. And so I can replace those question marks with that 6.295. And so now I've got my vaccines.png will be the same aspect ratio as what we had in the original, right? Cool. All right. So we need to make a plot. We need to get data, and we need to start working on the plot. So let's come back to the Kaiser Family Foundation website. And this was made using a tool called Data Wrapper. And so what that allows us to do is I can click on this link to get the data, and it will download it for me, right? Alternatively, I could also click on this, and this, if I open it up in a new tab, all right, it won't let me do that. I can go ahead and right click on this to copy the link address, right? So again, copy link address. And if you're using Safari or something other than Chrome, there's always something there if you right click. And if I paste that in here, I get this URL, right? So again, it's coming from Data Wrapper. And if I look in my downloads directory, let's see, that's this file. And so I think the version I'm using is the downloaded version of the file, right? So that's the original. To get the data, what I can do would be data, I can replace that full.png with data.csv. And I can then go ahead and put that in quotes and then do read_csv on that. And then again, if I, it is unhappy. Maybe I did that wrong. All right, let's go back to the page. And so let's go to get the data. And so I'll go ahead and do an inspect. And so again, that's get the data, and that's this span here. And let's see. CIJ. Let's see. I wonder what I'm doing wrong. All right, let's see if we copy that and plop that into the browser. That's unhappy. All right, let me see. So I could just use the data that I downloaded, which I feel like would be cheating. And where did I put that? Again, if I do get the data, that downloads that. Maybe it's data. Let's try that. No, that's not it either. All right. Let me test something out here. Well, let's see. Let's Google. So let's do what is the URL to download CSV from data wrapper? All right. Let's see. It looks like someone else was using the Kaiser Family Foundation. Let's see. All right. That's not what I want. Let me cheat a little bit. Did go through this earlier. And sorry about that. Okay. So let me see if I can figure out where that was. So this is the data wrapper. And I think it needs a 2 here. So 2 /, and then it's data.csv. There we go. All right. So I'm not sure how I knew it was the 2. Sorry about that. But again, you could always download the file, which I have in my downloads directory now. Let's see. Downloads, right? So that file I could move into my desktop, vaccines, right? And then I would have that here in my vaccines. What I'd prefer to do is to just directly download it, right? And so, like I said, we've downloaded it, and we now have the table in this bottom right corner, right? And so this is going to play a little bit hairy with how I talk to you all. So let me see if I can do something here. Let's see. Let me move my face up a little bit, because I know sometimes people don't mind looking at my ugly face. But anyway, hopefully that's not too distracting or in the way. All right. So we can see down here in the bottom right corner the data. And so something we see that's kind of nice is that it's a tibble, right? And we can see the first column is being called x.1. Those are the different groups. And then we have the 4 different vaccines: measles, mumps, rubella, polio, the flu, COVID-19. In the categories column, I see HTML, right? So if I do read CSV, select x.1, I see that we've got the B HTML anchors. So it is already formatted to bold for me, which is pretty awesome. So I don't have to worry about that so much. All right. And the other thing that we see, again, if I get rid of that, is that it's already anticipating my idea of being able to treat those headings, right, like the party ID or among Republicans, to treat those values as NAs, right? So it's already got that in for me. That was a very pleasant surprise, I'll say, okay? So let's go ahead and rename that column X1, and we'll do rename, and I will say grouping, or let's say group equals X.1. The rename function, 50% of the time I get wrong. I might say group equals X1 or X1 equals group. I don't know. But what I'm trying to do is to replace X.1 with group. So let's see if that works. Yes, that actually did work, right? Wonderful. Normally I would rename the columns of the 4 different vaccines because they're pretty long and gangly. But the next thing I'm going to do is to pivot longer to put, so I have 3 columns. We'll have the group, the vaccine, and the percentage, right? And that way we can then, we'll have a column with those long vaccine names. And ultimately, those will be the facet titles that we saw going across here, right? So many ways to do this. So let's go ahead and then do pivot longer. And I'll do minus group. So everything but the group, we want to pivot longer. And we'll do names 2, and I'll say vaccine, and values 2 equals percentage. And that's then, as we see, pivoted longer, right? That we can see we have this tibble, and we have the group column, the vaccine, and the percentage. Wonderful. So these are the data, and those are the groups, and the vaccines, and the percentages. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and we can do ggplot AES. Again, on the x-axis, we're going to want the percentage. The y is going to be the group. And let's leave it there for now. Let's go ahead and do fill, actually. Fill equals vaccine. And then we'll do geom_call. And then we'll feed that into vaccines.png. I am getting a warning message down here for basically running read CSV as well as ggsave. That warning message is what? That warning message is because I have those NA values, right? So these NA values, geom_call is going to complain about, right? There's 8 NA values for the 2 column headings, or the 2 row headings, if you will, and that we have NAs. So basically, those 8 NAs are resulting in these warning messages. Normally, I try to get rid of them. In this case, I'm going to ignore them, okay? Fabian says the link is maybe different. You changed it in R instead of copying it out from the website. Yeah, so that was probably what I did wrong. So anyway, so let's see what this looks like. So if we go over to our Explorer tab and then open up vaccines.png, I'm going to double click on that. Let's go ahead and minimize that. We now get our groups, and we get a stacked bar, right, for our 4 different vaccines. All right, remember what this looks like now, and soon, hopefully soon, it'll look like this, okay? So how do we go from this to this? So I think the first thing I want to do is to go ahead and facet by the vaccine. So to do that, I will add facet wrap, and I'll do tilde vaccine. And I'm going to do, let's leave it there, okay? And again, as I go through this, if you have questions or ideas, feel free to throw it in the chat, and I'll do my best to address those. Also, at the end of this episode, there will be a link down below in the description to this where you can find a blog post that will have the code that I'm generating here with you. So we're going to go ahead and I need to spell it facet, not face wrap, and we'll go ahead and run that. And so now when I come to vaccines.png, I've got this up, right? So one thing I notice is that it is doing 2 by 2. And I'd rather it be 1 row with 4 columns, right, to match the original. So I can do that very easily by coming back to facet wrap and do nrow equals 1. And we can then go vaccines.png, and we have our 4 columns with being faceted by 4 columns and 1 row of facets. Cool, huh? All right. So one thing that is kind of sticking out to me is that the groups are in a different order from what were found in vaccines original, all right? So to reorder that, what we want to do is to use a factor, okay? So we'll come back up here to after pivot longer, and I'm going to do, or actually, let's do it up here before pivot longer, because again, right here, we have our group, our 8 groups, right? And I want to make group a factor. And so to do that, we could do mutate group to be a factor of group. And then, the levels, that's going to be the order that I put those groups in. And I want to use the exact order that I have here. So I'm going to use levels equals group. And then if I feed that into the rest of the pipeline, and then look here, I can see it's changed the order, but it's kind of the opposite, or it actually is the opposite of what I want, right? I want total parents at the top and non-MAGA at the bottom. And so this is a common problem that I have where I forget that when it is plotting discrete variables on the y-axis or the x-axis, the bottom is the first and the top is the last. So what we've done in the past would be to come up here and do like rev on group to reverse the order of the group. And then this then puts total parents at the top, right? So I'm not going to do that in this episode because I want to try something out new from ggplot2 version 4. And so let's go ahead and come back to the article about ggplot2 4. And let me get you the whole thing, and I'll go ahead and paste that here into the chat. And one of the things is chord reversal down here towards the bottom. And so you fly down here. And so what they have added is the ability to reverse the order of any coordinate system. So previously this was possible with transform, I think, in like scale Y continuous or scale X continuous, the continuous scales. But they said it would be useful to have this for discrete scales, right, that don't support transformations, right? And so to do this, we can do chord, well, in this case, SF for a plot, and reverse the Y. But what I'm going to do is reverse the chord Cartesian. So let's come up here, and I'll do chord Cartesian, and we'll do reverse equals Y. And so that should reverse the order on the Y axis. And so now when we come to vaccines, I now see I have total parents at the top, non-MAGA and MAGA at the bottom, right? That's great. I could also do like XY, and that then can't quite see it. Well, you can see the 100 over here on the left, and then I think the 0 over on the right. That's not what we want to do, but just wanted to kind of show you that you could reverse X or Y or X and Y, but we'll do Y. And again, that gets us back to this scheme where you can't quite see it because 0 to 100 left to right, okay? Cool, right? That's another new feature in the 4th version of ggplot2. All right, so thinking about ordering things, I now see that my columns are in a different order from the original. The original goes MMR, polio, flu, COVID. Here we're going COVID, MMR, polio, the flu. We've got it in alphabetical order versus the order that it was in the columns of the table, right? So again, to change the order of things, we're going to use a mutate. And so we're going to do the mutate after the pivot longer, because before the pivot longer, those 4 vaccines are in 4 separate columns. Now they're in a single column called vaccine. So we'll mutate vaccine to be a factor, right? And then we'll do levels on equals vaccine. But vaccine is, I don't know how long it is, I forget. I will just make up a number and say like 20 values long, where it's repeating the same vaccine several times, right? And so what I want is distinct on vaccine. Maybe it's actually, let's try distinct. I think what I might actually want is unique. So let's try this. No, it didn't like distinct. So let's do unique. So we'll do unique on vaccine. Oh, and I think I forgot the pipe at the end of that. All right. But what that, let's see what this looks like before plotting it. So I'll go ahead and run those lines. And now what you'll see is that vaccine here is a factor, right? So we've got group as a factor and vaccine as a factor and percentage is a double, right? All right, so let's go back and look at the plot. We now have MMR, polio, the flu, and COVID, which again is the same order that they have in the original plot. Winning, huh? Cool. All right. So again, slowly but surely, we're getting our plot to look like their plot, and that's great. I think the next thing I want to do is go ahead and adjust the color of the different groupings because that'll allow me to get rid of this vaccine legend that I don't really need. I think this will also allow me to try something else new in the new version of ggplot2. And so I would typically do like scale, color, manual, and then I would put in the colors that I want, right? With this new version of ggplot2, I can do it within theme. And so let's come back here and the theming improvements. There's been a lot of improvements, or I don't know if they're improvements. I hope they're improvements, ways of thinking about themes, right? And so there are palettes, right? So within theme, we could do palette, color continuous, palette shape discrete. I'm going to do palette color discrete, if that makes sense. So we'll do palette, one L, palette, two T's, palette color discrete. Some things got me worried that that's not going to work, but let's try it anyway. Yeah, so the setting is palette, the aesthetic, which would be color, and the type, okay? And so, yeah, let's give that a shot. And so let me mix some stuff up. So we'll do like blue, yellow, green, orange. And so it should take these colors and use those as my color palette. There we go. And so now we see we've got blue, yellow, green, orange, which is what we want. Let me close some things here that I keep accidentally opening. All right, so that, again, palette color discrete allows me to put in the colors in the order that they are, right? So this isn't as powerful, I would say, as scale color discrete, but I don't know, it's a different way of doing it. And I think what it is trying to do is put a lot of these things that seem like they're theme oriented into the theme function. So again, I want to come over here and I want to get the actual colors. So as always, I'm going to go grab my digital color meter from utilities, and I'll open that up. And you know what? I am finally going to just put this in my dock. So I will right click options, keep in dock, because I'm sure people watch these live streams and are like, man, Pat, if it's your favorite tool, why isn't it in your dock? Well, now it is. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that hex code, and we'll go ahead and replace that blue with that. And then again, one other thing that I started looking into but didn't get very far was that if I put in the hex code like this, it shows me a square with the color. And if I hover over it, I can see the overall palette, right? But yellow or green or orange don't get those little swatches. So I think there's a way to deal with that, but I haven't spent enough time looking into that. Okay, I'll get that lighter blue, and then let's see, let's get this darker green. And then we need the lighter green. All right. And get that. And so now when we run this, we get the 4 colors, right? Those 4 colors match the 4 colors from the original. And again, we have used another feature from ggplot2 version 4. If you don't want the plot to show up in your console, why don't you assign it to a variable before saving it? You know, that is a good question. Let me see. If I do P like that, brilliant. I don't know why. That's a great idea. So I think what I've done is, yeah, save it as a variable P, and then this ggsave will save that as P. That's great. Thank you for that suggestion. I'm not sure why I hadn't been doing that all along. So that seems to work great. All right. And so maybe that'll stop having kind of the clutter over on the right side so much. All right. So let's go ahead and get rid of this legend, and that will expand our plot laterally. And so to get rid of the legend, I could do that in theme, or I could do it in geom call. I'll go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and do show.legend equals false. And so within geom call, that will remove that legend. And so now you can see I've got things spread out to the right more, right? That's cool. So one other bit of geoming that we need to think about are the numbers, right? The labels in those bars, and those are the percentages. So what I normally do is start by adding to my tibble the information that I need to make that plot, right? So like one would be, let's see, right. So this is another challenge. If I put a comma in, it puts the parentheses down to be left justified. And so what Positron wants me to do instead is to put all of the arguments on a separate line, okay? And so I could then come in here and do label underscore text equals paste 0 and do percentage with a %sign. And this then should give me, if I run those lines, and I look at the label text column over here on the right, I've got that 90%, right? However, I also see that I've got NA%, which I don't want. I don't want that to show up as my text. So what I could do instead would be to do if else, and I could say is.NA on percentage, right? So if percentage is an NA, then I'm going to return an empty string. Otherwise, I'm going to return the percentage with a %sign added to the end of that. And so let's go and see what this looks like now. And so now what we can see is that where we have those NA values, the label text is an empty quote, okay? For the color decorator based on names, use the colorize extension. Okay, I'll look into that for the next step, next time I use Positron. But thanks for that suggestion, Rens. All right, so now we have the label. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like if we add that. So let's go geom text and AES. I'll do label equals label text. And let's also do x equals 0 and see what that gets us. And so now we can see that we have our text label, and by default, it's getting centered on 0, right? Let's make it left justified on 0. And so to get it to be left justified on 0, I could do, this is going to be hard for me to learn. Let's go ahead and move these arguments down to a new line. And then we'll do hjust equals 0. And so now we see the text is inside of those bars. And I think looking at the original, we're going to have to do some fiddling with the font, but I feel like that is a bolded font. So let's go ahead and do font face equals bold. And while we're here, let's go ahead and maybe make this 10 instead of 0. And so now we have a bolded font, maybe over too far. And so let's take that down to say 3, and I'll stop fiddling with it for now, but that looks pretty good. So we're going to need to change a couple things about these fonts. So first, the X placement for the values below 38 need to be moved to the right side of the bar rather than being at like 5 or 3 or whatever I have it, right? We'll also need to change the color of the font. So let's worry about the X position first. And so I'm going to do label underscore X. And so then I will put in here, I'll remove this X equals 3, and I'll do label, I'll do X equals label X, okay? And so then we'll do if else, and I'll do percentage less than, let's say 40. If it's less than 40, then we're gonna put it at percentage plus 3. Otherwise, we'll put it at 3. So percentage plus 3 would be, so if this were my magnifying glasses here is at 38, plus 3 would put it at 41, okay? Otherwise, it's gonna be at 3. So let's go ahead and see what that does. And so now we can see that we've got those 5 labels to the right of the bars. And I think that looks pretty nice. So now what we want to do is to change the colors. In the original, MMR, flu are white and everything else is black. And then also the values, the percentages lower than 40% are also black. So I'm going to think about how to do this. So I'm going to make a label color argument, which will do another if else. You know what? Maybe here I'll do a case when. So we'll do case when. So case when percentage less than 40, and that's going to be black. And again, we're going to bear with me here. Okay. And so then if the percentage is less than 40, it's always going to be black, right? If the vaccine equals, let's see. Yeah, equals, polio, or vaccine equals COVID-19. Let me just double check that capitalization is right. Yeah, so it's all caps and that's right. So if it's either of those, then it's going to be white. Otherwise, the default is going to be black. Okay, so I picked polio and COVID-19 to be white because I didn't want to have to write out measles, mumps, rubella, or the flu. So now we have the label color, and let's see, that parentheses goes there, right? And now within geom text, I could do color equals label color. And what we see is that I've created 2 label color variables, black and white. The black is a dark blue color and white is it's not black. It's using the first color from my discrete color panel in the theme, right? And so, yeah, that's not what I want. So I'm going to, I want it to use black and white, the actual colors. And so to do that, I can come up here and do scale color identity. And scale color identity uses the value in the color aesthetic that's getting mapped to that color aesthetic. It's using that label or that text to set the color. So this then should use black and white. And so now I get black and white for those. Oh, but I flipped it. Why didn't you all say something? All right. I'm sure somebody said something or you were just about to type. But I have black for measles, mumps, rubella, and white for polio and flu and COVID. So I need to flip those. That's very easy to do here, right? So I could go ahead and do black, if I spell it right, black, and then for true, white. And so now looking at this, I get the right colors for measles, mumps, rubella, and the flu, looking good. So yeah, I think that is really like the meat of the plot we now have in shape. And now it's a matter of getting everything to look right and add the titles, right? So I think what we'll start with is the axis text, ticks, and titles. So looking at theirs, there's no ticks, there's no titles. So let's start by coming in here, and we'll do axis.text, no, not text, ticks equals element blank. I need a comma at the end of that. Axis.title equals element blank. There's also no line, so we could do axis.line equals element blank. Actually, does it have a line? No, there's no line there anyway, so it's already blank. All right. And so now what we see is that we don't have the title or the ticks. I do want the y-axis text, but I don't want the x-axis text, right? So then what we could do would be axis.text.x equals element blank. And so now we see we've gotten rid of those numbers across the x-axis. And for the y-axis text, I want this to be rendered with element markdown to use the bolding for total parents, party ID, and among Republicans. So to do that, we're going to have to do library ggtext. And then we could do axis.text.y equals element markdown. And I forgot a comma up here. All right. And so now you can see I've got the bolding and the regular font like we had hoped. Okay. Cool. That's looking good. We're going to want to play with the font here in a bit, but I'll worry about that later. One other thing we can think about now are the titles for our 4 different facets, right? And so we're going to want those to be left justified. We're also going to want like that measles, mumps, rubella to wrap. And so that is going to get controlled with strip.text. And here let's do element text box simple. So element text box simple will automatically wrap the text for us, I think. Yeah, and so the height on those strips got really narrow, but hopefully if you look closely here, I don't know if this zoom works. Oh, zoom works nicely. You can kind of see there's 2 lines there, but the strip height is not high enough. Right? So I think to zoom out, I can do Option and click. All right, not sure where it's supposed to be, but I think that'll maybe be okay for right now. How do you reset that? No. Let's say view, appearance. Yeah. All right. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Resetting the size. So in this element text box simple, there's a variety of arguments that we can use, right? And so one of them is height. So let's go ahead and do height equals, and that's going to take a unit argument, I believe. And I could do 2 lines. And so that then made it taller, right? And theirs uses a larger font, and it's going to go over 4 lines. Let's see. So if we did like size equals 12, we now see that it splits it up, but the height isn't high enough, right? So let's take this up to say 4 lines. And I'll leave it there because I think the font's going to get even larger, but that's kind of the idea. And we see it's also left justified, which theirs is also left justified. It's left justified on the bar. And this reminds me of something else, that we have a padding all the way around the bars, right? Like there's a gap between the bar, start of the bar, and the left side. So we can get rid of that in chord Cartesian by doing expand equals false. And so expand equals false will remove that extra padding. And then we see here that that's removed, obviously, that extra padding. Okay, cool. Looking at this, let's go ahead then and turn our attention. The bottom right 31 should be in the color bar, also looking into the 33%. I'm not sure I follow. Maybe come to it. The bottom right 31 should be in the color bar. So it's outside the color bar here. So I think we're okay, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, Rents. But I think we've got everything where it's supposed to be. All right. So let's right. So let's go ahead and add in these titles, and we can do that with the labs function. So we'll do labs, and I'll do tag equals figure 2. So that, again, that top bit of text above the title is not sure how to get out of the magnifying glass. Here, if I click on this magnifying, oh, I can do reset. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, it's because I have everything else zoomed in. All right. Yeah, okay. So down here, we can do that. And if I come to Vaccines Original, wonder if I can turn that off. No. All right, that's a pain. All right, if I do like copy, I wonder what that's copying. Nothing. All right. So I'm going to come back to the PNG where I can copy these because I don't want to type that out. There must be a way to go back and forth between magnifying view and copy view, but I'm not sure what that is. So we'll do title on that, and then add a comma to the end and do subtitle on that. And then we'll grab this there. And then caption will be this. And paste that in. All right. And so we're going to be using element text box simple for these titles because, again, as we saw with the facet titles, it automatically wraps the text for us. So I don't have to worry about putting in line breaks. Also, we're going to need some different styling for like very and somewhat to be bolder than the rest of the fonts, right? And so let me, let's see. So if we run this as is, I need a plus sign at the bottom here. And there we go. All right. Well, this is kind of freaky. All right, let me reset and zoom in. That's too far in. Okay, there we go. So that's at 40%. Let's take this up to 40%. All right. All right, so we've got our tag off to the left. We've got our title and our subtitle. And then our caption, as always, is right justified, but it's on 2 lines. So I wonder, I haven't worked with tag a lot, so it's a little bit of a learning experience for me as well. But I know that with like plot.title.position, I can set it to be justified on the plot rather than on the panel. And so if I do that, I see that it's now left justified on the plot, or at least on the left side of the longest title, right? And so that's okay. Also, I see the caption is right justified. We can do this it also is justified on the panel rather than on the plot. So if I do caption or plot.caption .position, I can do that to be plot. And I forgot, nope, that's okay. And so you can't really see a difference there, but that works. And okay, let's give that a shot. All right. So sometimes these windows are hard to work with when we're kind of pivoting back and forth, and I want to be able to compare my version to their version. And I need to make sure that I'm zoomed into the same level. Like, so I'm at 30% and here this is at 40%. And so maybe I'll take that down. Yeah, it's going to be hard to do. All right, I might have to just reopen it, whatever. Okay, we'll get there. So what we can see is that the tag has a different placement than everything else. So what do we do when we don't know what's going on? Well, hopefully we know to ask for help. So let's go to theme, and I'm going to look for something with like plot tag, because I've got like plot title, but there is plot tag position and plot tag location. So let's see where those are. So we'll come back down here to the description of those arguments, and let's see. So we've got plot title, plot subtitle, tag, position, location, right? So tag position allows us to do like top left, top right. I don't think that's what we want. And then tag location, the placement of the tag as a string of one of panel, plot, or margin. And so I'm curious if like plot title position has these same arguments. Here it's only panel or plot. So I think by default, plot tag location is the margin. That appears to be, it's putting it in the margin. And so if I make the plot tag location plot, then we should get everything to align on the left side. So we'll do plot.tag position equals plot. And it's upset. What did I do wrong? Let's come back to help. Oh, plot tag location, not position. Oh, that's really annoying. Those argument names should be different. They should be the opposite, because like position is the same as position for plot title position and plot caption position. That's weird. All right. Now we've got something screwy where the tag is left justified on the plot. Let me come back to the help again. So plot tag position. Maybe if I do plot tag position equals top left. I think that's the default though. Yeah, that doesn't change anything. All right, I'm going to remove that position, and then we'll come in, I'll do plot.tag equals element text, and let's do margin equals margin, t equals 10, b equals 10. So that's, this is weird. It's putting it in the middle. I don't like that. So let's remove, let's make the top 0. Puts that there. So let's try changing the margin on the title. We'll do plot.title equals element text, margin equals margin, t equals 10. All right, so that separates the tag from the title. Of course, we'll want to play with this a little bit more, but this is getting our tag, our title, our subtitle. Now, to get things to wrap appropriately, we're going to want to use that element text box simple. So instead of element text, we'll do text box simple, and then we'll also do plot.subtitle equals element text box simple, and then we'll also do plot.caption equals element text box simple. And then that gets us our wrapping, which is good. We have wrapping here as well. And that's all good. All right. So we've got our titles in. Clearly, they're not formatted the same way as theirs, but that's what we're going to turn our attention to next. Okay. So I like matching the fonts that they use in their original plot. And so I'm in here, and let's see if I like, let's see, if I highlight that text and then do inspect, that highlights this span. And so we can see, I don't know if you can see, like it says % who say it is, right? And so what I'm looking for is the font. And so I see up here, font family, Source Sans Pro, okay? So I'm curious, if I go to fonts.google.com and I do Source Sans Pro, there's a Source Sans, Source Code Pro, which isn't what I want, that's a monospace font. And there's a Source Sans 3. And that I'll trust is close enough to what they're doing, okay? So we're gonna now go ahead and bring in that font into what we're doing here. And so we'll come back up to the top of our vaccines.r script, and I'll do library show text, and I'll do font add Google, and the name is going to be that Source Sans 3, and we'll say the family equals Source Sans, and we might fiddle with the weights of the regular font and the bold font later, but we'll leave that for now. And then we'll do show text opts. We'll do DPI equals 300, and then show text auto. And so these show text ops DPI equals 300 will get the right resolution, and the auto will make sure that the font and the resolution are loaded for what we're going to be doing. And so then I need to come down, and within theme, I'll do text equals element text, family equals, I already forgot what I called it, Source Sans. All right. And so now that should get us that different font, right? So now we've got our Source Sans. The way I know that it's different from my default is if I look at the twos have this like sharp angle coming down to the base, whereas normally it's got like a bit of a hump coming down into the base. So I've got the right font. That is good. And yeah, we can see it's coming along. So let's start with the figure 2 label. I'm going to go ahead and close these, hoping that if I reopen them, they'll open in the right the right magnification, okay? So I think that's the right magnification. So figure 2 is too large. So that's the tag, right? And so then let's go ahead and let's do size equals 8. And I'll minimize this. So it could be a little bit bigger. So let's take that from 8. Let's do 9. And I think that's pretty good. Maybe it could be like, whatever. Let's do 9.5, and I will stop there. Oh, and I accidentally closed it. Silly me. And I think that's pretty much in the same place. And I think it's pretty close to the same color font. I think it might be a dark gray, not quite black. And let's go ahead and mess with that. So we'll do color equals gray 30. And I think that's good. All right. So now let's turn to the title. And so that needs to be bold. And ours isn't currently bold. So let's do plot title. And again, we'll put these on separate line. And we'll do face equals bold. Get mine over here. Okay, so now we've got that bolded font. And one thing I look for in terms of matching the size is where it wraps, right? So I wrap after the 2, they wrap after the 4. So I need my font to be a bit bigger, right? So I can do like size equals, let's try 15. And it's wrapping the first line correct. The second line I wrap at divided, and they're wrapping after R. So it could be a little bit bigger still. Let's take this up to say 17. And I think that's too big. So let's take that down to say 16. And the fonts, again, aren't identical. So they're going to be a little bit different. Let's try 15.5. Otherwise, that actually works pretty well. We get the same wrapping for the title. Good. There's a bit more margin in the original between the figure and the title, the tag and the title. So I currently have 10. Let's take that up to say 20. And that looks pretty good. And it's not precise, but the fonts aren't exactly right either. So I think that's pretty good. And I think the line height is also pretty good. So I kind of toggle between these two. Hopefully this isn't jarring to anybody. Anyway, then we want to turn our attention to the subtitle. And so again, the subtitle wraps after there, and there is under the R. And so that there needs to be over here. So let's come over to plot subtitle, and we'll do size equals, let's start with 12. And could be bigger still to bring that there over to the right a smidge. So let's take that up to say 14. And that's maybe too far. So let's take it down to say 13. And I think that's pretty good positioning. Again, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And the thing I notice about their subtitle is that very and somewhat important are bolded, okay? So again, we're using element text box simple. And so the very and the somewhat important need to be bolded. So we can make bolding with 2 stars. We can also use the B anchor like we saw in their row titles. And so now we get very and somewhat important are bolded, but I kind of feel like that is too bold compared to theirs, right? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 versions of the source sans font, okay? So there's going to be source sans, and then I'll also make title, okay? So the source sans is going to be all the text except for the title. And here then we'll do regular WT, let's say 400, and then bold WT. Let's make that say 600, so it's going to be a lighter font. And then up down here for the title, I want to do family equals title, okay? And it's upset. Why are you upset? As character, cannot. Let's look at the trace back here. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything to me. All right, let's come back here and let me rerun everything. All right, so if I had to guess, family equals title, the title needs to be in quotes. There we go, that error went away. And so now we see that the bold of our title is different from the bold of our subtitle, right? And feel like maybe their subtitle isn't black. I don't know. So let's go ahead and take that down. We'll do color equals gray 30. I think that's okay. We need to add some space between the subtitle and the title. So we'll go ahead and do that with margin equals margin T equals, let's try 20. All right, that's too much space. So let's go ahead and maybe take it down to say 10. And that's pretty close. I might need to add to like say 12. I think that's like pretty bang on. Okay. Cool. So we've got our tag, our title, our subtitle. Let's go to our caption, right? And so the caption is a little bit bigger font, and also it doesn't go all the way across the plot, right? It's maybe about 2/3 of the way across. So we saw something like this before with the strip, where we wanted to make it taller by changing the height argument in the strip text, right? We used height, right? So with caption, we can do width equals unit, and let's do like 10 lines. And so this should make the width 10 lines wide for the caption, right? And so we see that there. It's also center justifying it. And so I think we want to change h-align to be 0. And that wasn't it. Maybe, oh, let's come back to element text box simple. And I think v-align, h-align, I think, what's the difference between h-just and h-align? Horizontal justification, horizontal justification. What the heck? Let's do h-just. And now we see that that is left justified, okay? And 10 columns isn't enough. So let's up that to say 20 lines. And so we can see that goes across. We want it to end at about the 82, the MAGA bar on polio. So it needs to come back to the left a little bit more. And so let's make that maybe 15. Okay, that's too far. Let's go back to say 18. Too far. Let's take it to say 16. All right, I'll just do 17, and I think we'll call that great. Okay, now the font needs to be larger. Again, what we see is that it wraps at independence. And so it needs to be a little bit bigger, not a whole lot bigger. And so we'll come to caption and we'll do size. The other thing we can do is like compare that font to any other fonts. And so we see it's smaller than the subtitle. The subtitle was 13, so let's try 11. And that's too big because the independence was on the next line. So let's go to 10. And I think that's still too big. So let's make that 9. There we go. We've got the independence up there. And we don't quite have the same wrapping for those other lines. One thing I noticed is that on theirs, source is on a separate line, whereas ours is running through. And I think that's because the HTML or the Markdown is treating this source line separately, right? And so we could put in a BR for an HTML line break. And so now we see the source is on a separate line. Theirs has a bit of a gap between the two paragraphs. So let's see. Rent says, for publications, do people plot all the text in the same programs that generate the plot, or do they add text in the publishing program? So Johan says, if you mean scientific publication, the plot don't usually have a lot of text. That's correct. So you will find that people will do a lot of this stuff, say, in like PowerPoint, right? Or Illustrator. My goal is to make it so that you can do the whole shebang, the whole thing, in R. And Johan is correct, of course, that if you look at like a scientific publication, you usually would only have the main plot. You wouldn't have all this other stuff. That being said, I think if you were to make a poster and present a plot, you would want all this other stuff. Or if you were to do a talk and have a slide, you would want all this other stuff. And my goal, again, for reproducibility purposes, is that you wouldn't have to use PowerPoint or Illustrator or any of those types of things. So let's see. All right, so the other thing that we're seeing is a little bit of weirdness with the kerning. Sometimes this happens. I don't understand why. And let's see, what we were talking about was putting a space. So let's put an extra space between those two paragraphs. And we can do that with 2 BRs. Now with element text box simple, it will figure out the wrapping for us. So one of the problems I have is like all my text kind of flies off the right side of the screen. I can actually tab that over, put this on separate line breaks so that it's easier to read. And it'll look no different, right? And so let's do that also for the caption. All right, and then over here, and again, the only difference is that it makes it easier to read. It doesn't change the plot, right? All right. Again, I feel like that text is about the same color as the subtitle, which was this gray 30. So I'll go ahead and add color gray 30. Okay. And although I feel like our font is still too small, and you know what? I was doing that off of the bars, and the bars are going to change based on the size of the font for the y-axis text. So let's work on the y-axis text. So I'm going to come back up here to axis text y, and I feel like, well, first of all, my text is right justified rather than left justified, and my text is too small. So we'll do size equals, and again, let's compare sizes, right? So this is about the same size as those strip titles. And so where'd you go? So that was size 12. So let's make this 12, and we'll do hjust equals 0. And so now you can see that I've got the bold, it's left justified, and it's a bigger font. And that looks pretty similar in size. Mine is a grayish color because theme gray by default makes the text gray. So we'll do color equals black. And so that causes it to pop a little bit more. But I think those fonts are a pretty good match. And so now I think I can make my font down here, my caption, a little bit larger. So that was 9. Let's go up to 10. Yeah, maybe it should be 9.5. I think that's good. All right. So now what we need is a margin between the caption and the bottom of the plot, right? And so I'll come back here and we'll do margin equals margin. T, let's try 20. And so we've got some space there now. And I think we could have more space. So let's take it up to say 25. Oh, wrong way. Maybe it could come down to 23. And I think I'll call that Pretty good. All right, so let's now turn our attention to those strip titles because those aren't big enough. Actually, I'm confusing myself in what I'm looking at. I said that these titles are the same size as these titles, which is correct, but these titles aren't the same size as these titles. All right, so let's make those a little bit bigger. And let's, for my strips, I made them 12. And let's look at the original. So they seem like the same size as the subtitle. Maybe a little bigger. And that's 12. And then I put in, or that's 13, sorry. So let's make these 13 for the strip title, and the axis text, we'll make that 13. And that gets the wrapping to be correct, right? So those measles, mumps, rubella, MMR, it's on 4 lines. I think that's pretty good. And yeah, I think that's all pretty good. We need a little bit of spacing around the strip text, right? Like, so let's come back here. And with strip text, we did 4 lines. What if we do 4.5 lines? You can see now we have that space beneath the MMR. We could put a space below the subtitle like they have. And so we did T equals 12. Let's do B equals 5. And I think we can add some more space. So let's go, I mean, who cares, but I care. Let's take that down to 8, or up to 8. Oh, and I accidentally closed it. And I'm seeing a difference that these titles should be vertically justified. So if we again go to strip text, let's put this on a separate line, and we do vjust equals 0.5. That didn't do it. I think it's valign. And now those are center justified. Let's go ahead and get rid of the background color for those strips. And so we'll come in here and we'll do strip dot background equals element blank. That gets rid of the background. We can get rid of the background on the plot. And we'll do, let's see, m comma, panel.grid equals element blank. That gets rid of those grid lines, right? And now we do panel.background element blank. And then that clears that out, right? And so I think that's pretty amazing, pretty dead on. There's one bit of difference. Hey, Andres, thanks for joining in from Stockholm, Sweden. Awesome. The days are getting short here. I'm sure where you are, the days are getting really short, way up north. So the final thing that I'd like to do is add this logo, the Kaiser Family Foundation and the Washington Post. And to do that, we can use library ggimage. And if I come back to the web page, down here is the logo, right? And so I'm not quite sure where that was. So I'm going to highlight this source part and do inspect. And if I kind of drag down through here, I can begin to see, so where my mouse is in the source code, it then highlights it in the left side for that logo, right? And so if I expand this and expand it again, I can see the source for the logo, right? And so if I plop that in there, I then get this as the logo, right? So let's go ahead and do logo SVG is that, right? And it's been a while since I've used geom image, but hey, practicing something when you're not totally sure of the answer is the best way to learn something. So let's see if I can do this without looking it up. So we'll do geom image, and I'm going to want to do what? Let's see. What do I want to do? Let's do x equals 5, y equals 5, and then image equals logo SVG. Let's see what happens if I do that. I'm sure I know that's wrong, but yes, that. Did that run it? If you look really close right above my pointer here, you can see some text. Maybe it's a little bit easier to see on this lighter one. And I can see it on all 4 of these, right? So I said 5, what did I say? 510. 5, 5, right? And so this would be, again, I reversed the axes. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then it's centering it at like 5, right? And so it's putting it into all the facets, when what I want is, I want it down here, right? So I think what I'll do is I will tell it that it's part of the COVID-19 data, but then I want to plot it outside the plotting window. So it's going to take a couple steps. So the first step, before I forget, within chord Cartesian, I'm going to do clip equals off. And that will allow me to plot it outside of the plotting window, okay? And so now if I come back up to geom image, I'm going to do tibble equals, or I'm going to do tibble. Let's do x equals 5, y equals 5, vaccine equals COVID-19, right? And I think that vaccine equals COVID-19 and making this as part of a tibble should only put it at 5, 5 within the COVID-19 panel. And so that didn't work because I've probably forgot a plus sign after all that. Or maybe I forgot something. Let's see, geom image mapping must be created by an AES. And so maybe what I can do for x equals 5, that would be, let's do, yeah, I think maybe for this, we're gonna have to put it on separate lines, and I'm gonna have to add an AES statement, right? So if I do x equals x, y equals y, image equals that, still upset, you've supplied a tibble. Oh, and that's probably because I need to say data equals that, right? So if you look at like geom image, the first argument is mapping, and I was putting a tibble, right? So if I'm going to put them in different order, I should be aware that this is what I'm actually doing, right? And generate the image. And so it then changed the order. So it did put it in COVID-19 right there, but it changed the order of my columns. And I think that is because I no longer have COVID-19 as being part of a factor, right? So if I come back up here to geom image, where I have vaccine equals COVID-19, if I do factor on that and close those parentheses, now I get things back to where they're supposed to be. I've got my text there, but that's not exactly where I want it. It's also not the size I want it. So let's go ahead and move the position. So again, this is position 5, counting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, let's try like 10. Okay. And let's see. Where'd I put you? All right, so we'll make the Y 10. I can see it is there. Let's come down further and let's make that say 15. And it's like adding more space, so that's not good. So let's see. We've got Mahed from Saudi Arabia. Welcome. Okay, so Rents mentioned that he was seeing the 31 in different places based on the scaling of the image. So I'm basically now adding space, and I think that's because I probably need to set the limit on the y-axis. So if I do y-lim of what? So this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So would that be like from like 8 to 1? And I've lost something here. This is kind of screwing up a lot of other stuff, which is a little bit annoying. Let's see. Let's make the logo go back to 10. And there it is. But something got wonky up here with my measles, mumps, rubella. And maybe I should have the limit go from like 8.5 to 0.5. That's better. Yeah. All right. And so we've got that there. Let's go ahead and keep moving it down. Again, when packages are developed by different developers, they don't always like work ideally with each other. They don't always work great. So I think we're kind of seeing some of that with this. And I've lost it. So let's take it back to say 13. All right. I'm going to keep it at 10. And now let's figure out why the size is weird. So I'm going to come in here and we'll do geom image. And I'm interested in the size, right? So there's by one of width or height. Again, not very helpful. So let's do size equals 4. Just because that's what my keyboard hit. So that's big. All right, so that's gaining on it. And so I did 4. Let's take it to 2. That's smaller. Let's go to 1. That's cool. It needs to go to the left a bit, and I think I had 5. Let's make it 3. Go a little bit more over, and let's make it 0. All right, so it probably needs to go. So it's centering it, right? It's not. That's the justification, is it's centering it on what I'm giving it. So let's go to -3. That doesn't. Let's do -10. I'm not sure if I'm gaining on it here. Let's do -20. I don't seem to be gaining on it. It doesn't seem to be moving to the left any for me. Maybe we come back to the help. Oh, I want to get this to work. Maybe I'll do nudge X. Maybe it'll let me do that. And let's see, we're at geom image. Let's go back to 0. Okay, and then if we come back to geom image, and we do nudge X equals -10. That got it over. Okay, so using that nudge X helped. And now we want to bring it down, right? So we can change that with up here. Let's try 11. I think that brought it down. Let's take it to say 14. That went too far down. Let's try 13. Too far down. 12. There. And I think I can come down just a hair. And there we go. So I'm pretty happy with this. What do you think? This is my version. This is their version. Mine and theirs. I think that's like pretty bang on. Let me open both of them in preview so we can put them side by side. And let me get rid of my face. So the original is on the right. Mine is on the left. Let's see, they're a little bit, there we go. So yeah, so mine's on the left, theirs is on the right. And yeah, I think those are pretty close match. I think the challenge in this episode was a little bit, as always, the formatting. I think it's just, we accept that you can make a plot in ggplot2 in about 3 minutes. If you want it to look good, it's going to take you another hour and a half, right? And again, what I'm trying to do here is match what they were using in the original plot. I see that maybe my logo is too far down here. I'll probably nudge it up a little bit before I post the code. We had some fun playing with the fonts. And oh, I see a font I didn't change. And so let me do that. So hopefully nobody dropped off. But my font is not the same font. My font in the labels is not the same that I have out here, right? So like this 2 I mentioned has a bit of the hump, whereas this 2 is flat, okay? And so to do that, I am going to show you something else new from ggplot2 4, okay? And so within theme, you can do geom, right? And so that will then take element geom, and then we can do family equals source sans, okay? And so that will set the geom, the font family for the geom, whatever the geom, to be source sans. Now, if I run it like this, nothing changes, right? But to get that to show up in geom text, I can then come up within the AES statement. I can do family equals from theme family. Yep, family, okay? And so that is going to take the family argument from the geom, the geom argument within theme and insert it here, right? And so now, again, if we look at the 2 right here, you can see it's got that straight down angle, kind of like we have here, right? And so, again, what we've done is we've seen a different way to embed the font family for the geom, for geom text, within the theme function. And that is a new tool within ggplot2 version 4. And so alternatively, what we would have done would have been something like family equals sans, source sans, right? Right? So this is, so instead of doing this, we're doing this with this. And so what do you gain? I don't know. I think it helps to organize the data, organize the modification of the text together, right? I don't know how much I will use that myself, but again, it's something I think that is useful for thinking about how we organize our code. And there's some other things in the theme, within the theme function and related to the theme function they've incorporated to try to help organize the code. I'll let you maybe play with those, and I'll play with it a little bit to kind of think about how we can organize this. Because this, my theme function is what? It's like 34 lines of code, and my plot is about, I don't know, half that, right? So that theming can add up. So again, here are the two plots side by side. I think you'd be hard pressed to find the difference between the two. And I think they look pretty similar, and we've done a pretty good job of using ggplot2 version 4 to recreate a plot that looks a lot like the one put out by the Kaiser Family Foundation. With that, I will stop. I know this video has gone rather long. Hope you enjoyed learning more about Positron and how we can use it, seeing ggplot2 version 4, and of course, making this plot. And we will be back next Wednesday at 9 a.m. for another attempt to recreate a plot that I have found. If you want to know what that plot is, you need to subscribe to the channel. You need to subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, to see these videos, but also subscribe to my newsletter, where every week I put out another plot like these and kind of describe at that high-level view how I would go about recreating that plot. All right, we'll keep practicing with this. Tell your friends what we're doing here, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Code Club.